Welcome back to the Buffy. I'm Foodie, and in this video we're going to be taking the OEX Novo stove through its paces. This is a folding leg stove retailing for around £52, although you can pick this up for about £20 on most online retailers. It's got a 4,000 watt output, making it perfect to use up high or down at the base camp, whether you're cooking or just boiling up some water. Now we're going to put this through 4 different tests in this controlled environment here. In the first test, we're going to see how quickly we can boil 500 millilitres of water on this stove. We'll be using a full canister to make sure the pressure is even throughout. And then also for the second test, seeing how much gas this stove has used whilst bringing that water to boil. Now in the third test, we're going to do a heat distribution one, trying to make a flatbread on this stove in a pan to show how the heat has been dissipated through the pan. With a narrow flame head like this one, I'd expect to see quite an intense heat spot, perhaps even a bit of burning through the middle, rather than the edges being caught quite evenly. And in the final test, we're going to go back to the water boil, but now under some different conditions. So in this test environment, we're going to run a gentle breeze through the Buffy to see how this stove will perform in the elements. And under those 4 tests, we should be able to see how this stove will perform out in the outdoors. Let's see how it goes. Right then, so we've got a full canister as we stated, so we can weigh this just to showcase this is full, isn't a prop canister on there. You can see coming back at 378, so a bit more than the manufacturer is saying so. Again, stove wise again, should be a bit lighter as well. Down the canister. At around 222 grams there, 222, 224 for the OEX Novo. So we'll get this all folded out then into place. So quite a nice little small sturdy stove when it's on a surface. And otherwise we've got 500 millilitres of water that we're going to boil up on this stove as well that we've measured out previously. For all these stove tests, we're going to be using the Sea to Summit Sigma pan as well to make sure this is all controlled, using the same pan every time to make sure every stove has a fair test. I've already measured out 500 millilitres of water straight from the tap. We can showcase what this is on the temperature gauge as well. Around 16 degrees on that tap water. So we'll get that straight in the pan and we'll see how long this takes to boil up. Okay then, so we get the stove set up with the canister. We've got a nice gas hose on this one. Make sure we don't lose too much before we start this test. And get this lit up. Okay, lid on the pan, full blast, and we'll start the stopwatch. That's fair to boil, isn't it? Boiling. Okay. That water's boiled up. I've got 3 minutes 5 seconds for that water boil then. Let's see how much gas it's used in doing so. Canister back on the scales. And we've got 357 grams there on the canister. So we can see how much is used there on the screen. Now, that's the water boil test. We use 500 millilitres of water there because that's about the amount you generally use for 1 dehydrated pack and maybe 1 tea or coffee. Again, if you're boiling something up for some pasta or some vegetables, again, a nice amount there that would work just as well. So quite an efficient boil on that one, but let's move on. After the weight of the canister, the gas consumption and the water boil test, now to the heat distribution test. Okay, so the third test. So in this test, I've made up a little bit of a dough with some soy yogurt and some flour that I'm going to flatten out onto this board to cook on this stove in a pan. So completely in a dry pan, a nice little flatbread out there. It's a really nice accompaniment to any little dishes you've got in the outdoors. Really elevates those dishes and great to get the kids involved with as well. So we'll get the stove on here with the pan, get a little bit of heat into the pan and then get this flatbread into the mix. Okay, so we'll get the pan on the low heat then, just allowing that to distribute through the metal slightly. A little bit of flour on the board and get this dough pressed out. So again, you could use a rolling pin if you're taking that, but it's unlikely you're going to have that in your pack. But a water bottle will work quite nice, so maybe even a bottle of wine to roll this out if you're doing this in the outdoors. nice and flat there to get an even distribution in the pan to see how many heat potches we've got. Okay, so let's get rid of some of that excess flour off the flatbread just so that doesn't catch and burn too much. So a couple of minutes each side with this flatbread should cook this completely through. We should be able to see on the back of the bread how the heat has transformed this. So the bread's puffing up nicely, cook both sides now. Get this out the pan, get that stove off. And as we can see, a nice even heat distribution on this flatbread then. So it's performed quite well, that stove and that pan. Nicely cooked, good to eat to serve with a curry, stew, or something else, whether back at base camp or on the tops. So the OEX Novo has passed that test with flying colours. Let's try the final test under a light gentle breeze in the Boffy. Okay, so the final test for the OEX Novo stove is how it performs in a gentle breeze. So again, we've got 500 millilitres of tap water in here again, but again we'll sit between about sort of 15 degrees and 20 degrees in the pan, and like the first test, see how quickly this will boil, but now under these wind conditions. To test this wind speed, we've got this fancy named anemometer. Told you I'd get it. See how fast this wind really is. Okay, so we're sitting around 8.5 miles an hour, so again, just like a gentle breeze in the outdoors, perhaps a nice day on the tops, in the fells of the mountains. It should be enough to make this stove struggle slightly with this boil. So again, we'll get this lit, get the water on, start the stopwatch, and see how long this takes. It's a bit blustery out. Stopwatch on. So we're coming at the same amount of time as without the gentle breeze now, and we're only at 42 degrees, so a long way to go still. Now the OEX Novo is advertised as having its own windshield as such, but as you can see here, probably not enough to battle with the elements quite so much. A bit more natural shelter needed, or even a corrugated windshield for this one, I think. Now you do sometimes see with these titanium pots, being a lot thinner, the heat does transfer a lot quicker, but can easily be taken away as well by a bit of elements. So having this wind in this controlled environment is showcasing the fact this is taking a lot longer to boil. And that's 10 minutes then. 77 on the thermometer. We're going to call it there. 78 just tricking up there as we've turned it off. All in all, no boil in the gentle breeze for the OEX Novo. So there we have it. That concludes the test for the OEX Novo stove. And all in all, it's performed pretty well. It's boiled up 500 mils of water in around sort of 3 minutes 5 seconds, using around 17-18 grams of gas to do so. So the product specifications usually say around 23 grams per litre boil, so we're about right for that boil consumption there. For the heat distribution test, it cooked the flatbread through really nicely, so I'd imagine this stove would be great for heating through some nice stews, cooking sort of one-pot dishes through on this, or again making those breads again in the outdoors. But it did struggle under the gentle breeze when we had the fan coming through the Boffy there, so I'm not sure that would have ever boiled even if we kept that test running really far past 10 minutes. So perhaps don't use this stove on the exposed tops too much. Find some natural shelter or using that concertina metal shield there. Again, a really nice lightweight stove, and even though it's got quite a small intense flame head, performed quite well in the heat distribution there, so I wouldn't have any issues in recommending this one to go cooking outdoors with. It must be said though, with the Cedar Summit Sigma pan here, it did burn off the plastic handle slightly with the flames when we were doing the water boil test, so really lapping up the side of this pan, so perhaps it needs a much wider pan to use on it in the future, because it's quite a little beastly stove for a small one, packs a punch. But again, we'll find another pan for the next stove demo, but otherwise if you'd like to look at this pan, look through the stats of this on my website, www.fellfood.co.uk, and I'll link these products that are on display in this video in the description below. But otherwise, I'll catch you in the Boffy next time. Please like and subscribe this channel for future videos, and we'll see you in the Boffy next time.